Hey folks, so let's talk about a simple exercise for understanding the houses in your chart. So the purpose of this exercise is to put you in touch with a deeper understanding of your houses. So houses, as we know, are departments of psychological and physical activity. So houses have an interior component, meaning that they refer to the complex of emotional attitudes and mental attitudes and energy, consciousness, beliefs. That's the interior component of a house. But then we also have the external domain. So how those beliefs and attitudes represent in the physical world or manifest in the physical world. So today we want to do an exercise that's meant to put us in touch with what the content of our individual houses really is. And so we want to stress that we are talking about your houses, not the first house, the fifth house, the fourth house, but your first house, your fourth house, your fifth house. Because the houses belong to you in your birth chart. They are symbolic representations of your own energy. So we draw a birth chart, and that is a two-dimensional representation of something that belongs to you. So if there are 8 billion folks on the planet, we have 8 billion first houses, 8 billion second houses. And so what you want to do, folks, is get some paper, and you're going to draw on it a circle, and you're going to divide that circle into 12 houses. So you're going to slice it up into 12 sectors. And if you're like me, well, you're not the best drawer, or the best, you're not so good with pencil in terms of drawing things, but try to draw it if you can, using your own hand. For this one, I'm asking you not to go on the computer, but to draw it with your free hand. Use a ruler for the lines, if you will, if you're not able to create lines that are straight. So, but the point is to physically engage you, because physically engaging in this process by drawing it yourself is going to be psychically stimulating. You're going to see the connection between your own emotional, mental attitudes, beliefs, consciousness, and the outer representations of that. So draw it up, and then you're going to create a log. So you can write in the slices what's happening in your first house, your second house. So write down everything. Write down how you feel about what's happening in any given department of your life, your fears, your hopes, what's actually happening, your desires, all of these things. Describe it, log it. So pretend as though you are leaving a record for some distant descendant of yours in the future to uncover your paper and say, I wonder what my ancestor was thinking. And so you're leaving a record then. Imagine that. So a kind of anthropological exercise of sorts. So catalog your thoughts and the external events happening in that department of your life. So house 1, write about, log or catalog what you feel about your identity. Perhaps you might put your thoughts on how you look, describe how you look, what your sense of your identity is, and perhaps how you like to present to other people, but your immediate sense of what and who you are. How do you like to present yourself to the world? Your sense of how you identify. Yes, identify. It's a word that we are throwing about a lot these days. I identify as. So yes, well, write it down. What do you identify as? Yes. What beliefs and attitudes go into how you identify? What parts of your identity are you keen to show to the world, to other people? Yeah. Write that down. Second house, you're going to log what's happening in your life. Let's take the easiest bit. Log what's happening in terms of your financial flow. Write what your hopes are, your fears are, and see if you can write about or log or catalog what your beliefs are. What do I believe about my material security? What are my earning or spending habits, and what do I believe about them? What do I think? What's my emotional attitude and energy in respect of these things? How do I define material and physical security? What do I have to feel materially secure? How do I come to all of that? Write it down. The sensual needs of my body. Where am I with that? What's my relationship with that? On a more kind of interior psychological level, questions to do with personal value, worth, and self-esteem. Where are you with that? Write it down. So write down the external and the internal happenings of your second house. What's going on in there right now? Your third house, perhaps you write about what you're learning, if anything, in any department really. What are you learning? What information are you interfacing with on a daily basis? What things are you watching and reading and listening to? Lots of us spend quite a lot of time on our devices, and so, well, what are you watching and listening to and paying attention to? What is all of that? So write it down. Fourth house, well, write about, well, what's happening at home? Yes. What is the sort of overall state of your domestic affairs? How do you feel about your place of residence, for example? Issues to do with childhood. You could log those if there are any important things that need to be logged about how you feel in relation to certain parts of your childhood. Your family, your thoughts on your family, the one that you have created if you have a family, but also your family of origin. What is your relationship like with your parents, your siblings, your children? What's going on there? Give a sort of general feel of the emotions and thoughts that are going into your fourth house. Fifth house, you might log what's happening in terms of your creative outlets. Who are you? And what do you do when you are just being yourself and expressing yourself spontaneously and freely? What avenues and outlets do you have for your creativity? In what ways do you seek security in terms of your identity? What things in your life reflect or are used to reflect a positive self-image for yourself? Where do you feel appreciated, recognized, seen? What things do you want to be seen and recognized for? Write it down. What sorts of things do you depend on for validation and approval of who you are? What are my attitudes toward fun and enjoyment? What is my sense of my personal talents and creative assets? So write down the interior psychological parts, your feelings, your thoughts, and write down what's happening on the external level as well. Your sixth house, write down what's happening in terms of your everyday tasks and duties, your work environment. How do I feel about work? What's going on the external level with my work environment? What's my attitude toward performing everyday work and duties? A big one here is health. What's the state of my body and my mind? In what ways am I invested in any program of self-improvement? What's going on with my body, my physical body, and the health of it? And what are the inner attitudes that I have toward this question of my body's health and functioning? Catalog or write down any ailments, anything going on. What's the state of the body? House 7, who is showing up in my 7th house? What's the state of my partnerships of all kinds? My main relationship in terms of a significant other, what's going on there? How do I feel about what's happening there? What are my intentions and hopes and wishes and my fears in relation to relationships and connecting, being with another, establishing partnerships? All of that. Write down what your 7th house looks like. Remember that you're cataloging it for someone who doesn't know you down the line. Way down the line, to take out your paper, of course with your permission, in spirit, to open it, to look at what's going on. And perhaps they might look at it and they might learn something. And then the 8th house would, of course, require a bit of digging. The nature of the house is, well, what lies beneath. Yes, so it does take some alertness to understand what's happening in the what lies beneath parts of our lives. What's happening in terms of the exchange of emotional and sexual energy. It's a big one, big one. And so, well, what's happening there? What are my thoughts about what's happening there? My feelings? What pain points and wounds do I carry? In what ways am I learning to be empowered in respect of these wounds? What things provide me with a deeper sense of emotional security, emotional and soul security? What do I have to be anchored into that gives me a sense of security and power? Yes. Joint assets is a mundane physical representation of the 8th house. Write down what's going on there. Joint assets, things of that nature. 9th house, what are the overarching beliefs that guide my understanding of life? What meaning do I tend to give to experiences in my life? What interpretive framework do I assign to events in my life? How do I find higher wisdom and understanding of my experiences in some kind of spiritual framework? What spiritual activities am I engaged in to gain more understanding and wisdom? What experiences have I been gaining understanding and wisdom from? What am I learning in the broader sense? Where am I traveling to? What am I teaching, if anything? Again, what are my deepest beliefs and guiding philosophies that frame how I understand and interpret my life? Very big question. Where do I think wisdom can be found? From what sources and places and people? 10th house, what's going on with my vocation in the broader sense? Not just your job, but your vocation, your calling, what you sense to be your role in the world and how you express that, how you would contribute to the world through your skill sets. What am I striving toward? What do I want to achieve? What do I think I have to do to achieve what I want in terms of my career? What am I striving to excel at? What do I want to be known for? What beliefs do I have about success and being recognized for my work? What goals am I moving toward? So log it, write it down. So write down the physical events that have happened recently in that department, but also your inner attitudes, your beliefs, your hopes, your wishes, your fears. What is the state of your 10th house? Not the 10th house, but your 10th house. 11th house, what is my relationship to broader collectives of people of which I am a part? How do I express my concern for a cause that is bigger than my personal concerns involving a greater collective of people? Where am I connecting with those of like mind? In what ways may I be joining with others to support something that has a broader significance than my own personal concerns? What networks of association am I a part of? How do I express my concern for a community? What communities do I feel I am a part of? Because we will all come to that differently. How do you see the collective in the broadest terms? What's your notion of community? Is it defined by how you look, your race, your values, your interests? What is it? And how do you approach bettering or advancing that community with whom you share bonds? Yes. For some, that advancement may look like social justice activities or initiatives. It could be by a certain kind of politics or humanitarian sorts of interests. How does your 11th house look? What is the broadest community that you think you belong to? Obviously, you might say, well, that's human. I'm a human, or you may not think of it in that way. What's your notion of the broader collective or community that you belong to? How do you define that? How do you relate to that? What do you think about that? 12th house, to put it sort of simplistically, well, what does my spiritual life look like? What things do I do to connect with or to contemplate the deeper sources of my being, the deeper non-physical sources of my being? What cycles of consciousness are coming to an end in my life? What am I releasing, letting go of? That's a 12th house process. A video on that to come soon, on the 12th house processes, what happens in the 12th house when we go into that dimension of life. What have I noticed in relation to any cyclical behavior patterns that tend to undermine me? What dimensions of my consciousness need to be healed? As we said, in terms of cycles of consciousness that have come to an end or are ending or are in the process of being released. What am I dreaming about, imagining? What's going on in the realm of my imagination? And what fruits does that yield? Do I create things from my imaginative faculties? Of course, our painters and poets and musicians and photographers and filmmakers who tend to tap into that quite easily. So what is in the realm of your imagination, your dreaming self? What goes on there? What acts of compassionate service am I engaged in? Or do I feel called to be engaged in? What is my inner being, my inner psyche, my soul revealing to me about who I am, my strengths, my weaknesses, what needs healing? And to what greater whole do I belong to? Does my consciousness belong to? A few things to contemplate there. So the point of this exercise is for you to become more aware of, more in touch with the complex of emotional, mental attitudes, beliefs, consciousness that make up your houses. So as we talk about transits, for example, Jupiter or Saturn going through a house, it would be those things, what you've put into your slots, that would be subject to the processes shown by the various transits. These transits must be considered in the context of your houses, not just the second house, the third house, but your second house, your third house. What goes into your houses? And so the action of the transiting planets would make sense in the context of your consciousness as it inhabits those departments of your life. And if you're having trouble with the more internal reflective side of this exercise, look at the external happenings of a house and see then if you can extrapolate from the external to what the internal component is. In other words, the situations, events, and people and places will give you keys and clues into the deeper consciousness and belief templates that you have running in any house domain. So in order to have a meaningful sense of transits, we have to understand the field that a planet, a transiting planet, is entering. All right, so a simple exercise that I hope you find enriching. I have in the past given my clients and students this exercise to do, and it frees up a whole lot and reveals a whole lot to you about yourself. So my hope is that it will do the same thing for you. All right, so reminding you as usual that I'm available for a range of private astrological counseling, teaching consultations and packages, and links to that are in the description box below, where you'll also find links to other resources and material, most notably my class on aspects. So until next time, talk soon. Bye.